Hey guys, it's time for my final review of the Castlevania Game Boy Advance trilogy with Circle of the Moon. And yeah, I know, I really shouldn't have reviewed the 3 games backwards, and I promise I will never do it again. So, anyways, how did this launch game fare over the years? Well, let's find out. Storyline. After Camilla resurrects Dracula, he blows the floor under you and leaves you and Hugh to rot in his catacombs. Hugh, realizing that their master is still with the Lord of Darkness, ditches you. We later learn that Dracula is preparing to exact revenge on the Baldwin family by sacrificing Master Morris to the moon. There isn't one mention of the Belmonts save for the vampire killer, but even then the game acknowledges that Morris Baldwin, not Simon Belmont, was the one who defeated Dracula. While the plot is fine, and it's really great seeing Dracula act like a threat again, just don't expect the story to connect with the rest of the Castlevania universe. Gameplay. Circle of the Moon features the Whip and Dual Setup System, or DSS. The slide attack is thankfully available at the start of the game, very helpful for those poison warns early on. The most useful will be the whip spin, which is where you hold down the attack button, causing very little damage. It sounds useless at first until you realize that many of the enemies and the bosses are projectile spammers. Mastery of initiating this move becomes imperative at the beginning, and as the game progresses and save points are more spread out, it is usually the difference between life and death. Another important thing to master would be the DSS system. In order to use your cards, you pause the game, click on the DSS, pick one card from the top and one from the bottom. You won't find out what a card does unless you trigger it. The game does not leave you completely blind though. If you go and click cards and read the description, you can find out what the cards do and, just put one and one together. Now, 2 of the most useful cards would probably be the Neptune in any card, and the Uranus one. This is because the Neptune one can make you invulnerable to whatever element or status you attach with it. Very, very useful for all those poison and ice areas. And the Uranus one? Well, anything that can cause a giant chicken to fly across the screen and kill everything in sight has got to be the coolest card. Even with the help of the DSS, this is a pretty hard game, and at certain parts, such as a properly named Eternal Corridor, almost unforgiving. First off, there are no shops. Nathan pretty much starts the game with nothing but the vampire killer. Any items you receive must be dropped by enemies. While the status potions are extremely helpful, the majority of your potions do absolute crap. 20 points? The first boss hits for about 25 each time. Now, I want you to look at my menu screen. I'm currently a level 55. I haven't touched my recovery items. Right now, I'm at the brink of death. Okay, check this out. I use every single one I've earned in the entire game, and it still doesn't fill my health completely. What doesn't make sense is that you'll get way more equipment that is either pointless and you can't sell. I only have 1 armor and 2 item slots. Do I really need 38 wristbands, 20 magic gauntlets, and 29 leather armors? There are better potions and food items, of course. They just require finding the right enemies. Unfortunately, these right enemies are also some of the toughest in the game, on league with some of the bosses. I'm not saying that items are useless, because they aren't. But they could have adjusted it to where more recovery items are dropped. Oh, and if you want the good equipment, be prepared to grind and spam the magic chicken attack a lot. The castle exploration is really well done. Save points are spread out, but not too much where it is impossible to get from one point to the other. Lots of health, magic, and heart upgrades are everywhere, and usually within those many secret passages. Another bonus is that many of these secret passages have monsters who keep DSS cards. Even if you miss a few of these secret passages due to the game upgrading some of the enemies at certain points, you have more opportunities to gather rare items, cards, and experience. As mentioned, since every secret passage has something good, These never feel like a waste of time. Now, unlike Harmony of Dissonance's two castles that were claustrophobic, empty, and difficult to navigate through, Circle of the Moon has many wide areas and platforms. While mastering jumps is required to progress through the game, there aren't any areas where if you fall, you die. Let's look at this area. I could wait for the super jump near the end of the game, or I could use my Serpent and Mercury card combo to free the enemies, use them as platforms, and climb it early on. While enemy AI is very predictable, with set patterns and timing, the challenge is that the attacks hit hard and tend to be overwhelming at times. Not only that, but many of the status attacks can last obscenely long. Poison can take a good chunk of health, Ice can kill you if your enemies hit you a few times, and Curse prevents you from using your whip or attack aside from the slide. Bosses are pretty strong. This one, the Twin Dragon, can be very difficult the first time you meet it. Each dragon has about 1500 hit points, and unless you're great at dodging, this battle can feel like it lasts forever without the cross. The best part is that out of all three games, Dracula, at least in his second form, is finally the most difficult enemy in the game, who has a move where if you don't dodge it, can kill you in 3 hits. Presentation. The graphics are detailed and the models themselves look good. The game has a more gothic feel than the other two due to the high usage of dark colors, especially when compared to the very bright Aria of Sorrow. I think my favorite level would be the Chapel Tower. Not only does it have the most color, the music fits very well, and I like the giant bells in the background. However, many of the graphics didn't have a lot of animation. Nathan looks like he has about 2 or 3 frames, and the backgrounds felt quite static, with the exception of the machine tower. This game, in a literal sense, is dark, at least on my Game Boy Advance. I happen to have one of the first ones, and even under a bright light, I could barely read the main menu screen. But while the graphics didn't age gracefully, it does have a great soundtrack. Now, right from the start, before you even touch a button, the haunting chorus and the subtle sound effects of creaking doors and the bats just immediately grab you. Each area is distinct, and the ending song is just an amazing piece. I'm a little disappointed in the lack of background music for the arena. Considering this is the toughest part of the game, it feels awkward hearing only the sound effects. Replay value. Well, the bad news is that you can't play as Hugh. What is different is that each time you beat the game, you can earn a new mode to play in. For example, here I've earned the Magician mode. All the DSS cards are available at the start. I have super high intelligence, but my defense and attack is terrible. There are 4 in all, and sorry guys, you can't just enter the password. You have to beat the mode itself before progressing to a different one. Talk about hardcore. If you want the perfect 100%, you have to play the game at least 5 times to get the full experience. But fret not, if that sounds like too much work. There is the Battle Arena, over 17 rooms filled with monsters of every type from the game and more. Overall, Circle of the Moon is definitely the most difficult of the 3, but thanks to the DSS system, it's not impossible. I think if they would have adjusted the item drops and how much they did a little better, then it probably would have balanced the game more. The only thing that really frustrated me was just trying to see the game. If you have an SP, you should be fine. While the game does not have the prettiest castle, it is the best designed of the 3 games. I give this game an 89%. With the last game completed, I am finally done with the trilogy. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed playing the games, and I still do. But it's time to move on to other games. Tops, signing off.
Riviera, the Promised Land.